Okay, as we know, when we talk with Murray Wood, CEO of Dubbo Regional Council, received thumb up, one thumb from New South Wales Health of the boil water alert for properties serviced by the Rifle Range Reservoir in West Dubbo is lifted. The Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson. Are you pleased with that or dissatisfied? On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the satisfaction rating on that, Matt?
3.
3!
I think your pressure obviously helped yesterday. I think you had some pressure to bear from a public perspective in terms of New South Wales Health listening to some of the science and data that we had. So thank you very much for your help there, Richard. So we've gotten one step there, but we've still got a few more steps to go, obviously. And it's a little bit complicated for people. They've actually got to go and check the map that we've got, dubbo.nsw.gov.au/water. You can actually go and look at that map and see exactly where your place is and what reservoir feeds your place to see whether or not you don't have to boil your water or you do have to boil your water. So it's a little bit complicated, so I apologise for that. But the decision was made, it was better to release the reservoirs as New South Wales Health gave us the thumbs up to release a reservoir rather than penalise all of Dubbo while we're waiting for the last reservoir to get to that point.
Yeah, okay. New South Wales Health and the Dubbo Regional Council, I hate this expression, but I'll use it, Matty Dickerson, on the same page in regard to the turbidity of the water. Are our scientists, our science matching between New South Wales Health and Dubbo? In other words, are we seeing the same facts about this thing?
We're seeing the same facts, but just a difference of opinion on the release of that boil water alert. As we discussed yesterday, we believe we're at the point now where the water in our reservoirs is free of any major risk of cryptosporidium, but New South Wales Health want to see more flushes through our system. And we talked about it yesterday, Richard, that we can store approximately 86 megalitres in our reservoir system already since we've been producing water that's below the 0.5 level that it has to be. Then already we've put in twice that volume of water. Over 170 megalitres has already gone through, and that was yesterday, obviously more again by today. We can treat about 22 megalitres a day at the moment. So we've got twice the volume of water that's gone through our reservoir network, but that doesn't seem to satisfy New South Wales Health. They're trying to get down to this 0.1% dilution level for water that was in our reservoirs to the water that comes in from the treatment. Now remember, we only had about 7.8 megalitres of water that was outside the specifications required go into our reservoir network back on the 7th of July. So logically, you would think that we're at the point now that there is none of that water left in our system. That water's been flushed through, and the water coming out of our taps is the water that's being treated at the correct specification right now. But again, that's where there's just that slight bit of disagreement between our officials, our scientists, our experts, and the New South Wales Health experts.
Is New South Wales Health playing games?
I don't think they're playing games. They're concerned about
showing us that they're tougher. They can tell us what to do.
Well, they can, and that's the bottom line. They can. We can't lift the boil water alert until they give us the okay to do that. Or I suppose if we did lift the boil water alert, the New South Wales Health could come down and change that boil water alert, which would just confuse the whole community. The biggest risk I see, Richard, in this scenario that we have at the moment is that if we get to that point where the residents of Dubbo are smart enough, they can work out whether or not they think it should be on or not. And if it gets to the point where we're saying, because New South Wales Health are saying we need the boil water alert on, then people start to ignore those warnings. A bit like when you drive past roadside signs that say 40 k's an hour roadworks, and you look and the road's perfect and there's no equipment there working. Some people say, well, I'm going to ignore that 40k sign. You can risk the same thing happening here, that people ignore the next boil water alert that happens around the state. And keep in mind, these happen more regularly than I realised. As I said yesterday, 56 boil water alerts in the last 2.5 years that we've had across the state. So they're more common than I realised they were.
Yeah. Okay, flashback, and the reason this has all happened is because we had that flood event and we had lots of crap going down the river, including bodies and poo and the whole lot, and crashing all over the place. That's the start of all of this too. Does Health in New South Wales, are they aware of the precarious nature of their decision making?
I'm sure they're aware of it, but the problem is I think there are some people based in Sydney and they're directing some of the decision-making that's happening at a local level. And I don't know that people in Sydney realise the impact that it has on the community in a regional area. And that's one of my issues, one of my concerns sometimes when you have these discussions, is that you're dealing with people that are sitting in an ivory tower somewhere in Sydney and have no idea the ramifications for people out here in a regional area. And sometimes they don't even realise that we've got a thriving regional metropolis. We've got a modern city here. We aren't a little boondock. We're not a little country town. We're a modern city. And that's something that I think some Sydney people struggle to realise or grasp.
Yeah, has Kerry Chan rung you up?
No, we did talk about that yesterday, that I'm sure if Kerry wanted to get my phone number, she could, but I don't know that she would even be acutely aware of what's happening. I don't know that it's reached Kerry's level at this stage. I would assume that the staff...
So a bunch of white coat scientists deciding all this?
Not so much a bunch of white coat scientists. I'd say more the officials at senior levels in New South Wales Health are making these decisions and recommendations. And again, don't get me wrong, they're worried about the health of the community. We are worried about.
We are.
Yeah, we are worried about the health of the community as well. But you have to get to a point where you think that the risk has been minimised to a level that it's then okay to go back out to the community and say you are now okay to use the water as you would normally use it. Everything we do in life has a risk, so you're trying to always minimise that risk. And as a council, we are not interested in going out and creating an entire disease-ridden community if everyone suddenly has crypto and everyone's clogging up the hospital system with their versions or variety of crypto.
Absolutely, we don't want the toilet paper shortage, that's for sure.
We don't.
So as far as we're considering what's going to happen, Murray Wood told me yesterday, Matthew, that it could be by tomorrow we have the rest of the West, and then maybe the Newtown silo on Fitzroy Street may be given the all clear as well. But there's lots of maybes and ifs and perhapses in all of that, isn't there?
You're exactly right, and we are continuing to work with New South Wales Health and keep presenting information to them. We've actually had to hire our own consultants in to try and present even more compelling information to New South Wales Health. That's another cost.
You've hired consultants. What are they, chemists, are they?
Well, they are water consultants. So we've actually hired specialist consultants in because we needed to give New South Wales Health even more compelling evidence. So that's more cost to the community. And again,
are they ignoring the evidence that you're giving them?
They're disputing or disagreeing or arguing, and so they're coming at it from different angles. And keep in mind, again, that's a cost to our community. But I go back to it, Richard, and I say it was still our water treatment plant. So it's not New South Wales Health's fault that our water treatment plant had that turbidity level above 0.5 for 10 hours and 18 minutes. That's council, and we own that responsibility. Where we're at the moment, though, if we own that responsibility and we went through that process where we didn't deliver water to a correct standard, we are also saying now we believe we are delivering it to the correct standard and have been for long enough that we could lift that boil water alert. But again, we have a slight disagreement there.
You send them the stuff in a test tube or canister or whatever. They make the decision in Sydney, and then they tell you no go. That's how it works.
Well, it's not even a test tube canister. They don't believe in the testing process with cryptosporidium. They believe in this dilution factor. In other words, we've got a reservoir with water in it. You had a little bit of water that was below spec and now lots of water that's above spec. We want to keep having that good water going. So it's all based around spreadsheets. We're arguing about spreadsheets.
And you dispute and they dispute. So there's an arm wrestle going on here.
That's correct. And unfortunately, from our perspective, they win the arm wrestle every time because they're New South Wales Health and they can overrule us.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Some of West Dubbo is in it. dubbo.nsw.gov.au/water. Hopefully tomorrow the rest of West Dubbo will be able to turn on their taps ad infinitum. And then on Friday we might get an all clearance, but there's still the Buninyong one, isn't there?
Yeah, there's still more to go there. And if you are a bit confused about that website and you're not sure, just ring council. Our staff are there ready to take calls and you can give them your address and they can tell you whether or not you're in. So at the moment, Rifle Range Reservoir is in West Dubbo, as you said there, and very roughly it's basically west of the river and south of Narromine Road, but there's little spots in around there that are in or out of that. So just gives you a general area, a very broad brushstroke, but there are spots in there. So just double check either on that map or ring our staff and they'll certainly tell you exactly where you are.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave that there for now, Matthew Dickerson. 68014000 is the staff. Be courteous and respectful if you're concerned about that. And on to your breakfast, we'll definitely update you. Before I let you go, that your council master plan to improve Dubbo's urban Macquarie River foreshore is a little bit closer. the legacy shared pathway system. Please explain.
Yeah, so this is around that foreshore event precinct. One of the original discussion points around there was a boardwalk, but when engineers started looking at the boardwalk and the flood rivers that would go through there, it was decided that that was at too big a risk to being damaged by floodwaters. So it was brought back more onshore rather than a boardwalk that went out over the water. So this latest part of it now, this shared pathway, is really part of that whole event precinct. And I think it's pretty exciting. You'll have an event precinct there, so you can have events, you can have small events, you can have concerts, you can have Christmas carols, a whole range of things there. But then this whole shared pathway that'll basically go around that event precinct. And we're talking about the Ollie Robbins Oval area, right, just behind, say, the Riverdale, the old Ford building there, so around that area in the middle there. So that's where the event precinct will be, and then the shared pathway is designed to basically open up that whole area. And I'm even thinking of things like markets. I was up at Darwin a month or so ago, and some of the night markets they have there are fantastic, and there's just this area there that's just open, and then all these markets appear out of nowhere, and all these stall holders are there. It's fantastic. So you can just imagine having markets there, you can imagine having events, you can imagine just a whole range of activities. And I'm pretty excited about the idea of really activating our CBD. We've obviously got number one Church Street being built there. That'll be 14 floors of people living there. A couple of other developments in the CBD have been approved where people could live in the CBD. And suddenly I think you'll have more activity, both nighttime, weekend and daytime activity occurring around that whole CBD. And these sort of precincts, these sort of shared pathways, I think will add to that whole activity around the area.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 320-metre stretch of kind of boardwalk. There'll be viewing platforms jutting out over the Macquarie. Is that right?
You'll have some viewing platforms, and that's where I think the engineers and they're doing some of that.
Can you fish from
them? Probably not, actually. You're probably not sure, actually. I'm just trying to think.
What's the point of having a thing over the river? You can't drop a line.
Well, I'm not sure if they actually will stick out, because I think that was part of the design plan, was to bring that back a little bit so that you didn't have it sticking out so far. Because as we've seen with some of these floods, for example, and we're going to see more of these type of events that are going to be variable, with all the debris that's been caught up around, say, Shibble Bridge and around the Tamworth Street Bridge, that debris, trying to stop that with a bridge, which is a fairly significant structure, is one thing, but having viewing platforms or a boardwalk, for example, sticking out, there's more likely to be damage there.
Yeah.
So
that's just my dreaming. And when are we going to see activity? When are we going to see it starting?
Yeah, I think you'll see some activity within, well, we'll go out through a tender process and start to get that happening there. We're talking about maybe $3.5 million here from the New South Wales government. You've got, it's a fairly big project there. Yeah. And so I think we'll see some activity fairly shortly in terms of the tender process, and then basically get into the actual construction of it all. Theoretically, by the end of next year, that whole area will be finished. So that's the whole event precinct, the shared pathway, the whole lot. So we're only talking about a year and a half, and that whole area will be done.
Yeah, be exciting to see what happens. The Dubbo Mayor, Matthew Dickerson, some big projects, not the least of which, of course, we'll see how this water goes too. Thank you for your time this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.